The ultimatum, the morning Earth changed forever, started like any other. Birds sang in Tokyo's parks, waves crashed against California's shores, and children played in London's streets. Nobody saw the ripple in space above the atmosphere until 200 warships materialized from hyperspace, casting shadows across continents. Commander Sarah Chen stood in the Earth Defense Command Center, her coffee mug frozen halfway to her lips as alarms screamed through the underground facility. The holographic displays flickered to life, showing massive vessels arranged in perfect formation around the planet. Each ship dwarfed humanity's largest space stations, their hulls gleaming with an otherworldly purple sheen that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "How many contacts?" Chen asked, setting down her mug with steady hands despite the chaos erupting around her. 217 vessels. "Commander," Lieutenant James Park reported from his station, fingers dancing across holographic controls. They appeared simultaneously at Lagrange points around Earth. No approach vector detected. "They just arrived." Chen studied the tactical display. The alien ships hung motionless, weapons powered down but shields active. They weren't attacking, which meant they wanted something else. "Any communication attempts?" "Negative, Commander. They're broadcasting something on multiple frequencies, but our systems can't decode it yet." The translation came 30 minutes later. By then, President Maria Rodriguez had been evacuated to the secure command bunker, joining Chen and the Joint Chiefs of Staff. The message played through the speakers in a voice that sounded like grinding metal mixed with wind chimes. "People of Earth, I am Supreme Executor Velix of the Eternal Hegemony. Your species has been evaluated and found suitable for integration into our empire. You will surrender all military assets, submit to hegemony rule, and provide tribute in the form of resources and labor. You have one planetary rotation to comply. Resistance will result in the complete sterilization of your world." The room fell silent. General Morrison, a veteran of 3 decades of military service, was the first to speak. "They're demanding our surrender without even firing a shot." "They don't think they need to," Chen replied, her mind already racing through defensive scenarios. "Look at their fleet disposition. They've positioned themselves to demonstrate superiority without wasting resources on combat." President Rodriguez turned to her advisors. "Options? Our entire space fleet consists of 43 vessels," Admiral Harrison reported grimly. "Most are patrol craft and research ships. Against that armada, we'd last maybe 10 minutes. So we surrender?" Secretary of Defense Williams asked, though his tone suggested he found the idea as distasteful as everyone else. Chen stepped forward. "Madam President, there's something you need to know. Something that's been classified beyond top secret for the past 20 years. Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. "Commander?" Chen activated her personal authorization codes, and new holographic displays materialized. They showed schematics and deployment charts that made several officials gasp. "Project Shadow Strike, ma'am. We've been preparing for this day since we detected the first signs of intelligent life beyond our solar system." The displays revealed thousands of vessels hidden in pocket dimensions, floating in spaces between spaces that conventional sensors couldn't detect. Ships built using technology reverse-engineered from crashed alien probes and enhanced with human innovation. The Black Armada, as the project leaders called it, consisted of 8,000 warships equipped with dimensional phase drives, quantum torpedoes, and shields that existed in multiple realities simultaneously. "How is this possible?" President Rodriguez asked, staring at the numbers. "How did we build this without anyone knowing?" "Mining operations in the asteroid belt were cover stories," Chen explained. "The real construction happened in null space facilities. We've been moving resources and personnel through dimensional gates for 2 decades. As far as the regular universe is concerned, these ships don't exist until we want them to." General Morrison leaned forward, studying the specifications. 8,000 ships against 200. "Those are good odds." "Better than good," Chen corrected. "Our ships can phase in and out of normal space at will. We can strike from dimensions the hegemony doesn't even know exist. But there's more." She brought up population statistics. "We've also built emergency shelters in null space. Entire cities that can house our population if needed. If the hegemony wants to threaten civilian targets, they'll find Earth empty when they strike." President Rodriguez stood, her decision made. "How long to evacuate our population?" 18 hours for major population centers, 24 for complete evacuation." "Do it." Begin immediately, but keep it quiet. We don't want the hegemony to know what we're doing. The president turned to Admiral Harrison, and prepare a response to Executor Valix. The evacuation began within the hour. To anyone watching from space, Earth continued its normal routine. Cities stayed lit, vehicles moved on highways, and communication networks remained active. But beneath the surface, millions of people walked through shimmering portals into null space shelters. Families gathered their essentials and stepped into another dimension, leaving behind empty homes that automated systems would keep running. In New York, teacher Patricia Wong led her class of 30 students through an evacuation portal in their school basement. Remember, children, this is just like the drills we practiced. Stay together and follow me. The children, surprisingly calm, walked through the silvering gateway into a replica of their classroom that existed in null space. Outside the windows, instead of New York's skyline, swirling gray mists of dimensional energy danced in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Aboard his flagship, Supreme Executor Valix waited for Earth's response with the patience of a being who had conquered 43 species. His crystalline form shifted colors with his mood, currently a satisfied amber. The humans would surrender as all species did when faced with the hegemony's might. Executor, his tactical officer announced, "We're receiving a transmission from Earth's leadership. Display it." President Rodriguez appeared on the viewing screen, flanked by her military advisors. Her expression was calm, almost serene. "Executor Valix, Earth has considered your demands carefully. We've consulted our people, reviewed our options, and reached a unanimous decision." Valix leaned forward, his amber glow brightening in anticipation of another successful conquest. "Humanity does not kneel," Rodriguez continued. "We do not surrender. We do not submit. If you want Earth, you'll have to take it from us. But I warn you, Executor, you've made a grave error. You've threatened our children, our families, our home. For that, there will be consequences." The transmission ended. Felix's crystalline form flared red with rage. No species had ever refused the hegemony's demands. It was unthinkable, impossible, and would not be tolerated. "Prepare for planetary bombardment," he ordered. "We'll make an example of these primitives." But as the hegemony fleet moved into attack formation, space around them began to ripple. Scanner operators across the alien Armada reported the same impossible readings. Massive energy signatures appearing from nowhere. Ships materializing from dimensions that shouldn't exist. Commander Chen stood on the bridge of the EDS Retribution, flagship of the Black Armada's First Fleet. Around her, 2,000 vessels dropped out of null space in perfect formation. The hegemony ships, for all their advanced technology, couldn't target enemies that existed partially in other dimensions. "All ships, this is Commander Chen. The hegemony came to our world expecting submission. They threatened our families and our future. Today, we show them why humanity survived every challenge nature threw at us. Today we show them that Earth doesn't kneel to anyone." She turned to her weapons officer. "Target the hegemony flagship. Fire null space torpedoes." The weapons launched from a dimension the hegemony couldn't detect, materializing inside Velix's shields just before impact. Explosions rocked the massive vessel as its crew scrambled to understand what was happening. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out. Human ships phased in and out of reality, striking hegemony vessels from impossible angles before vanishing again. Fighters appeared inside enemy formations, delivered their payload, and disappeared before return fire could be organized. Captain Marcus Rivera commanded the stealth destroyer Ghost. His ship specialized in psychological warfare, using dimensional technology to project false images and sounds directly into enemy ships. Hegemony crews reported seeing human vessels everywhere and nowhere, hearing whispers in empty corridors, watching their instruments show contacts that vanished when investigated. "Sir," Rivera's communications officer reported, "the enemy fleet is trying to retreat." "Negative," Rivera replied. "They threatened Earth with sterilization. We're not letting them leave to try again elsewhere." The vanishing. The hegemony's retreat turned into chaos as human forces seemed to materialize from every direction. Supreme Executor Valix watched his tactical display in disbelief as ship after ship went dark. His mighty fleet, which had conquered civilizations across 3 spiral arms, was being systematically dismantled by a species that had barely achieved faster-than-light travel. "Impossible," he muttered, his crystalline form flickering between colors of confusion and rage. Scan for their origin points. They must be launching from somewhere. His science officer's tendrils trembled as she worked her console. Executor, the human ships aren't coming from normal space. They're emerging from dimensional rifts that our sensors can't properly track. It's as if they exist in multiple realities simultaneously. Meanwhile, on Earth, the evacuation continued with clockwork precision. Cities that had housed millions became ghost towns in hours, though automated systems kept lights burning and transportation running to maintain the illusion of normalcy. In null space, humanity waited in cities that existed between dimensions, watching the battle through quantum sensors that could peer into normal space. Dr. Kenneth Yamamura stood in the null space version of Tokyo, surrounded by millions of evacuees who watched the battle on massive holographic displays. Children pressed against windows that looked out into the swirling gray void of dimensional space, while their parents discussed the impossible technology that had saved them. "How long have we been preparing for this?" asked one man holding his daughter's hand. 23 years, Yamamura replied. "Ever since we detected the first hegemony probe entering our system. We knew this day would come." Back in normal space, Captain Rivera's ghost had perfected the art of dimensional warfare. His ship would appear just long enough to plant false sensor readings, making the hegemony think massive human fleets were approaching from all directions. The psychological impact was devastating. Hegemony crews, used to being the dominant force in any engagement, found themselves jumping at shadows. "Captain," Lieutenant Torres reported, 3 hegemony cruisers are firing at empty space. They think our phantom signatures are real. Good. Let them waste their ammunition on ghosts. Meanwhile, signal the Red Squadron. Time for them to make their move." Red Squadron consisted of 12 heavy destroyers that had been waiting in null space directly beneath the hegemony formation. They emerged simultaneously, rising through dimensional barriers like sharks breaking the ocean's surface. Their quantum cannons fired in perfect synchronization, targeting the hegemony ship's engine cores. The hegemony cruiser. Endless Supremacy took 3 direct hits before its crew even realized they were under attack. Captain Zorthak, a veteran of 100 campaigns, watched helplessly as his ship's power core went critical. In his final moments, he transmitted a warning to the fleet. "They're everywhere and nowhere. We can't fight what we can't see." Commander Chen coordinated the assault from the Retribution, watching as humanity's hidden fleet systematically destroyed the would-be conquerors. But she wasn't content with just winning the battle. She wanted to send a message to anyone else who might threaten Earth. "Signal all ghost units," she commanded. "Begin Phase 2. Phase 2 was psychological warfare on a galactic scale. Human ships began broadcasting on all hegemony frequencies, sending messages in the aliens' own language. The broadcast told stories of humanity's history, how they had survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and disasters that would have destroyed other species. How they had learned to adapt, overcome, and most importantly, never surrender. But the real masterstroke came when human hackers, working from null space, infiltrated the hegemony's communication network. They transmitted footage of the battle directly to the hegemony's homeworlds and subject planets. Billions of beings across the galaxy watched as the mighty hegemony fleet was torn apart by an enemy that seemed to exist outside the laws of physics. On the hegemony capital world of Supremacy Prime, the Council of Executors watched in horror as their invasion fleet was decimated. First Executor Malix, ancient even by hegemony standards, spoke with a voice that hadn't shown fear in 3 millennia. "What are these humans? Our analysts said they were a primitive species, barely capable of interstellar travel." Intelligence Executor Vernix displayed the data they had gathered. "Our initial assessments were based on what the humans allowed us to see. They've been hiding their true capabilities for decades, possibly longer. The technology they're using, dimensional phase shifting, null space manipulation, quantum entanglement weapons, some of it surpasses even our understanding." Back at Earth, the hegemony fleet was down to 50 operational vessels. Velix's flagship, the Inevitable Victory, had taken severe damage. Half its decks were venting atmosphere, and its weapons systems were failing. The Supreme Executor stood on his bridge, watching his empire's reputation crumble along with his fleet. "Executor," his communications officer announced, "we're receiving a transmission from the human commander." Chen's image appeared on the damaged view screen. Her expression was calm but determined. "Executor Velix, your fleet is beaten. Surrender now and we'll allow your surviving ships to leave. Continue fighting, and we'll ensure none of you return home." Felix's pride warred with his survival instinct. The hegemony does not surrender to lesser species. Lesser? Chen smiled coldly. You came to our world with 200 ships. You have 50 left, and that number decreases every minute. We've shown only a fraction of our capabilities. Do you really want to see what else we can do? To emphasize her point, 1,000 more human ships dropped out of null space surrounding the remaining hegemony vessels. These were from the second and third fleets, fresh and ready for battle. Their appearance was perfectly coordinated, a show of force that demonstrated humanity's precise control over dimensional technology. Captain Rivera watched from the Ghost as several hegemony ships simply powered down their weapons. Their crews had had enough. The mighty empire that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia was being humbled by a species it had dismissed as primitive. Sir, Torres reported, we're detecting numerous escape pods launching from hegemony vessels. Let them go, Rivera ordered. We want survivors to spread the word about what happened here. In null space, the evacuated population of Earth watched the battle's turning point with a mixture of relief and amazement. In the replica of Times Square, crowds cheered as the hegemony fleet was forced to surrender. Children drew pictures of the Black Armada's ships, while adults discussed what this meant for humanity's future. Dr. Yamamura found himself fielding questions from reporters who had been evacuated, along with everyone else. Doctor, how long can we maintain these null space cities? Indefinitely, he replied. We have fusion reactors, hydroponic farms, and water recycling systems. We could stay here for generations if necessary, though I don't think that will be required. The truth about humanity's preparations went even deeper than most knew. The null space cities weren't just emergency shelters. They were fully functional colonies that had been secretly populated for years. Millions of humans had been living and working in dimensional space, building the infrastructure for humanity's expansion beyond normal space limitations. Maria Santos had been one of those secret colonists, raising her family in null space New Geneva while maintaining the cover story of working at a mining station. She watched the battle with her children, knowing that after today the secret would be out. Mom, her daughter asked, does this mean we can tell people where we really live now? Yes, sweetheart. The hiding is over. Back in normal space, Executor Felix made the hardest decision of his long career. His pride had cost the hegemony most of its invasion fleet. Continuing to fight would only lead to complete annihilation. All remaining vessels, he broadcast, stand down, cease all hostile actions. The words tasted like poison, but he spoke them anyway. The hegemony had surrendered for the first time in its history, and to a species that had been spacefaring for less than a century. The revelation. The surrender of the hegemony fleet marked only the beginning of humanity's revelation to the galaxy. As Executor Felix's remaining ships powered down their weapons, Commander Chen initiated the next phase of humanity's response. It was time to show the universe that Earth was not just defended, but that humanity had become something far greater than anyone imagined. Open a channel to all hegemony worlds and subject planets, Chen commanded. Full-spectrum broadcast override their security protocols. Across the galaxy on thousands of worlds, regular broadcasts were interrupted. Screens in homes, public spaces, and military installations suddenly showed the space around Earth. The mighty hegemony fleet hung broken and defeated, surrounded by the black shapes of human vessels that seemed to defy conventional physics. Chen appeared on every screen, speaking in galactic standard that had been perfectly translated by humanity's quantum computers. Citizens of the galaxy, I am Commander Sarah Chen of Earth Defense Command. Today the hegemony came to our world demanding our surrender. They threatened our children and our future. This is our response. The broadcast showed the full might of the Black Armada as all 8,000 ships dropped out of null space simultaneously. The sight was overwhelming, a perfectly coordinated display of power that dwarfed even the hegemony's initial invasion force. Ships of impossible design, their hulls seeming to exist in multiple dimensions at once, formed geometric patterns around Earth that demonstrated a level of coordination no known species could achieve. On the insectoid world of Chiton Prime, Queen Mother Zeketh watched the broadcast with her compound eyes reflecting 1,000 images of the human fleet. Her species had served the hegemony for 500 years, forced into slavery after a brief, brutal war. Now she saw their oppressors humbled by a species that had achieved spaceflight within her own lifetime. Summoned the War Council, she commanded her attendants. If the humans can defeat the hegemony, perhaps the time for our freedom has come. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. On the aquatic world of Depth, the Coral Parliament witnessed their hegemony overlords panic as communication from the invasion fleet ceased. On the machine world of Binary, the synthetic collective calculated the probability of successful rebellion and found the odds suddenly favorable. But humanity's revelation went beyond military might. Dr. Yamamura had been authorized to share the true scope of human achievement. From null space Tokyo, he broadcast to the scientific communities across known space. For 23 years, he began, showing images of null space cities and installations. Humanity has existed in two realities. We've built entire civilizations in the spaces between dimensions. We've solved the resource crisis by mining from infinite parallel realities. We've conquered death itself by backing up consciousness to quantum substrates that exist outside normal space-time. The implications were staggering. Humanity hadn't just built weapons. They had transcended the limitations that bound other species. The null space cities weren't just shelters but thriving metropolises where millions lived, worked and innovated in ways impossible in normal space. Captain Rivera's ghost delivered the next surprise. His ship materialized directly above the hegemony capital world of Supremacy Prime, having traveled 10,000 light-years in seconds by taking a shortcut through null space. The planet's defense grid, the most sophisticated in known space, couldn't target a ship that existed partially in another dimension. Citizens of Supremacy Prime, Rivera broadcast, we could destroy your world as easily as you threatened ours. But humanity doesn't wage war on civilians. We're here to deliver a message. The age of hegemony domination is over. The Ghost released thousands of small probes that scattered across the planet, each one broadcasting evidence of hegemony war crimes committed over millennia. Secret documents, hidden recordings, and suppressed histories flooded the planet's networks. The hegemony's own population learned the true cost of their empire's expansion. First Executor Malax watched from his crystalline palace as protests began in the streets below. His own people, who had been told they brought civilization to savage worlds, were learning they had been the savages all along. Back at Earth, the defeated hegemony fleet waited nervously as human ships moved among them. But instead of destroying the surrendered vessels, human medical teams began boarding them to treat wounded crew members. The contrast with hegemony's standard practice, which was to destroy defeated enemies completely, was not lost on the watching galaxy. Executor Valix found himself in the unusual position of being a prisoner aboard his own flagship, though his human captors treated him with surprising respect. Commander Chen personally visited him in his quarters. I don't understand, Valix said, his crystalline form dim with confusion. You have the power to destroy us completely. Why show mercy? Chen sat across from him, her expression thoughtful. Because that's what separates us from you. You rule through fear. We'll lead through example. Your empire is built on the bones of conquered species. Ours will be built on cooperation and mutual respect. You think the galaxy will simply accept human leadership? Felix asked. We're not seeking to rule, Chen replied. We're offering an alternative. Every species you've enslaved will be given a choice. Remain under hegemony control or join a new alliance of free worlds. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within hours of Chen's announcement, 17 subject species declared independence from the hegemony. The insectoids of Chiton Prime were first, followed by the aquatic depths, the synthetic binaries, and dozens of others who had suffered under hegemony rule. Queen Mother Zekth herself sent a message to Earth. The hives of Chiton stand with humanity. For 500 years we have waited for this day. We offer our fleets and our warriors to the cause of freedom. But the true scope of humanity's power was revealed when President Rodriguez addressed the galaxy from Earth. Behind her, portals to null space opened, showing the true population of humanity. Not just the 3 billion on Earth, but the 15 billion living in dimensional colonies that had been hidden for 2 decades. We are not conquerors, Rodriguez declared. We are builders. We offer every species the technology to create their own null space havens, to expand beyond the limitations of normal space. No longer will wars be fought over resources when infinite dimensions await exploration. No longer will species face extinction from cosmic disasters when they can evacuate to parallel realities. The Hegemony Council of Executors held an emergency session as their empire crumbled around them. Subject species were rebelling. Their own population was rioting, and the humans had demonstrated technology that made their military superiority obsolete. Intelligence Executor Vernix presented his analysis with tendrils trembling. The humans possess at minimum 5 technologies we cannot counter: dimensional phase shifting, null space colonization, quantum consciousness transfer, parallel reality mining, and temporal communication across dimensions. Our scientists estimate we are at least 300 years behind them technologically. How? Demanded War Executor Craxus. How did a species that achieved faster than light travel only 50 years ago surpass us? Because, Vernix replied, showing intercepted human communications. They knew we were watching. Every technological achievement we observed was deliberately shown to us. Their true development happened in null space where our sensors couldn't reach. They've been preparing for this moment for over 2 decades. The full implications hit the Council like a physical blow. Humanity hadn't just defeated them. They had orchestrated every aspect of this encounter. The invasion fleet had walked into a trap decades in the making. Meanwhile, the Black Armada began its next operation. Ships spread throughout the galaxy, appearing above every hegemony-controlled world simultaneously. The message was clear. Humanity could strike anywhere, anytime, and there was no defense against their dimensional technology. Captain Rivera's ghost appeared above a hegemony slave processing station in the Outer Rim. The facility had operated for centuries, breaking the will of newly conquered species. Rivera's crew watched in satisfaction as null space portals opened and human special forces poured through, liberating thousands of prisoners who had thought they would die in chains. One of the freed prisoners, a young reptilian from a recently conquered world, looked up at his human rescuers in amazement. Why help us? We're nothing to you. The human soldier helped him to his feet. Because everyone deserves freedom. That's what humanity fights for. The New Order, 6 months after the hegemony's defeat, the galaxy had transformed beyond recognition. The old order, built on conquest and fear, had crumbled. In its place, something unprecedented was emerging. The Free Species Alliance, with humanity at its heart but not its head. Earth had become a pilgrimage site for thousands of species seeking to understand how humanity had achieved the impossible. The planet, once hidden at the edge of a spiral arm, now hosted the largest diplomatic gathering in galactic history. Representatives from over 300 civilizations had come to participate in creating a new interstellar government, based on cooperation rather than domination. Commander Chen, now Admiral Chen, stood in the newly constructed Unity Station orbiting Earth. The station existed simultaneously in normal space and null space, a testament to humanity's mastery of dimensional technology. Through the transparent aluminum windows, she could see ships from dozens of species arriving for the Constitutional Convention. Admiral, her aide reported, the hegemony delegation has arrived. Chen nodded. Even the fallen empire had been invited to join the new alliance, though as equals rather than rulers. It had been President Rodriguez's idea. True peace could only come through inclusion, not exclusion. Valix, former Supreme Executor, now simply Ambassador Valix, entered the conference room. His crystalline form had changed over the months, the harsh angles softening, the cold light warming. Defeat had humbled him, but it had also freed him from millennia of dogma. Admiral Chen, he greeted her. I've come to personally thank you. Chen raised an eyebrow. Thank me? For showing us there was another way, Valix explained. The hegemony ruled through fear because we knew no alternative. We believed that without our iron grip, the galaxy would descend into chaos. You've proven us wrong. Across the galaxy, the transformation continued. Null space technology, freely shared by humanity, had ended resource scarcity. Species that had fought for centuries over planets now had infinite dimensions to explore and colonize. The chitinoids had created vast hive cities that existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously. The aquatic depths had built ocean worlds in null space where they could expand without limit. Dr. Yamamura, now director of the Interdimensional Science Institute, worked with scientists from every member species to push the boundaries of what was possible. In his laboratory, which existed in a pocket dimension accessible from 12 different worlds, breakthroughs happened daily. We've confirmed it, his synthetic colleague, Unit 9739, announced. By combining human null-space technology with hegemony quantum processing and chitinoid hive-mind coordination, we can create stable wormholes between any 2 points in the galaxy. Yamamura smiled. Not just in the galaxy. Any 2 points in any dimension. We're about to make distance irrelevant. Captain Rivera, promoted to Commodore, commanded the Alliance's new peacekeeping fleet. Unlike the hegemony's enforcement ships, these vessels were crewed by members of multiple species working together. His ship, the renamed Unity, had a human captain, a hegemony navigator, a chitinoid weapons officer, and a depth engineer. Commodore, his mixed-species bridge crew, reported, "We're receiving a distress signal from beyond the galactic edge. Unknown species under attack by automated harvesters." "Set course," Rivera commanded. "Maximum null space velocity. If someone needs help, we answer." The Unity phased into null space and emerged seconds later at the galactic edge, where a desperate battle was underway. Massive automated ships, relics from a long-dead civilization, were attacking a convoy of refugee vessels. Rivera's crew didn't hesitate. Human, hegemony, chitinoid, and depth worked in perfect coordination, their different perspectives and abilities combining into something greater than the sum of their parts. Within minutes, the harvesters were disabled, their ancient programming no match for the Alliance's combined technologies. The refugee convoy, belonging to a species that had fled from beyond the galaxy, sent messages of gratitude in an unknown language that the Unity's quantum translators quickly decoded. "You saved us," their leader transmitted. "We had heard rumors of a new alliance in this galaxy, one that helps rather than conquers. We had hoped to find you." "You have," Rivera responded. "Welcome to the Free Species Alliance. You're safe now." Back on Earth, President Rodriguez addressed the Constitutional Convention's final session. Representatives from every member species, even some from beyond the galaxy, filled the vast amphitheater that existed in a bubble of space-time, crafted specifically for this moment. "We stand at the dawn of a new age," she began. "Not a human age, not an age of any single species, but an age of true unity. We've proven that diversity is not a weakness, but our greatest strength. When humans, hegemony, chitinoids, depth, synthetics, and hundreds of others work together, we achieve the impossible." The Constitution of the Free Species Alliance was signed that day. It guaranteed fundamental rights for all sentient beings, established democratic governance with representation based on population and contribution, and most importantly, enshrined the principle that no species would ever again dominate another. Former First Executor Malex, now an elder statesman advocating for hegemony integration into the Alliance, spoke to his people from Supremacy Prime. "For 3 millennia, we believed that order could only come through control. The humans have taught us that true strength comes from cooperation. Our children will grow up in a galaxy where they are partners, not rulers, and they will be better for it." The transformation wasn't without challenges. Some hegemony hardliners attempted to seize control of remote military installations, hoping to restore the old order. They were quickly defeated, not by human forces alone, but by combined alliance fleets that included former hegemony subjects fighting for their newfound freedom. In null space, entire civilizations were being born. Humans and aliens worked side by side to create wonders that neither could have achieved alone. Cities that existed in temporal loops where time could be accelerated for research or slowed for preservation. Archives that stored the complete history and culture of every member species in quantum crystalline matrices that would last until the heat death of the universe. Captain Patricia Wong, the teacher who had led her students to safety during the first evacuation, now directed the Alliance's educational exchange program. Children from different species learned together in schools that existed between dimensions, their young minds easily adapting to concepts that older generations found challenging. "Look at them," she said to Admiral Chen during a visit to her interdimensional classroom. Human, chitinoid, and depth younglings played together, their differences forgotten in the joy of discovery. "This is the future. They'll grow up unable to imagine a galaxy where species were enemies." Chen watched the children with a smile. "We fought so they wouldn't have to." The Black Armada, once humanity's secret weapon, had evolved into the Alliance Defense Force. Its ships, now crewed by volunteers from every member species, patrolled not to conquer but to protect. They escorted refugee convoys, defended against rogue automated systems, and explored the vast reaches between galaxies, always seeking new civilizations to invite into the alliance. A year after the hegemony's defeat, humanity revealed its final secret. Deep in null space, they had been constructing something unprecedented, a gateway to other galaxies, powered by the simultaneous collapse of artificial stars in 17 dimensions. We call it the Bridge, President Rodriguez announced to the Alliance Parliament. With it, we can instantaneously travel to any galaxy in the observable universe. The age of true universal exploration begins now. Ambassador Valek stood to address the Parliament, his crystalline form glowing with an emotion his species had rarely shown. Hope. Once, the hegemony sought to rule a single galaxy through force. Now, as part of the Alliance, we join humanity and all free species in a far greater adventure, peaceful exploration of the infinite cosmos. The first expedition through the bridge included representatives from every Alliance species. As their ship approached the swirling portal that bent spacetime itself, Commodore Rivera stood on the bridge, surrounded by his diverse crew. "All stations ready?" he asked. A chorus of confirmations came in languages that just years ago had only been heard in conquered worlds. Now they spoke as equals, as explorers, as friends. "Take us through," Rivera commanded. The ship entered the bridge, reality bending around them as they traversed impossible distances. When they emerged, they found themselves in a galaxy unlike anything they had ever seen, filled with wonders and mysteries waiting to be discovered. But that's another story. On Earth, Admiral Chen stood in her garden, the same one she had tended before the hegemony arrived. The flowers still grew, the sun still shone, but everything had changed. Humanity had gone from a single-planet species to the catalyst for the greatest alliance in galactic history. Her granddaughter, playing with a holographic toy that projected images from 17 dimensions, looked up at her. "Grandma, why did the bad aliens think they could beat us?" Chen lifted the child onto her lap, looking up at the stars that now held friends instead of threats. "Because they saw only what we showed them, sweetheart. They thought we were weak because we chose peace. They didn't understand that sometimes the greatest strength is knowing when not to fight, and the greatest power is using it to protect rather than conquer." The child nodded solemnly, then brightened. "And now we have friends everywhere." "Yes," Chen agreed, watching a Titanoid shuttle pass overhead, its passengers waving at humans below. "Now we have friends everywhere." Epilogue. The legacy 5 years had passed since humanity revealed the Black Armada to the galaxy. Earth, once a small blue marble hidden in an unfashionable spiral arm, had become the symbolic heart of a new galactic civilization. Not its ruler, but its inspiration. The transformation was visible everywhere. In Earth's orbit, massive stations built with combined technologies from 100 species served as meeting places for cultures that had never imagined cooperation. The old United Nations building in New York had been preserved as a monument, while the new Alliance Parliament met in a structure that existed in 7 dimensions simultaneously, allowing representatives to attend in whatever form of reality best suited their biology. Former Supreme Executor Velix had written a book, published simultaneously in 400 languages and 17-dimensional formats. Its title, translated into human terms, was The Humility of Power: How Humanity Taught the Galaxy to Dream. It had become required reading in schools across the Alliance. In it, he wrote, "We came to Earth believing ourselves superior because we had conquered. We left understanding that true superiority lies in the ability to lift others up. Humanity could have crushed us, could have become the new hegemon. Instead, they chose to free us all, including ourselves, from the prison of our own making." The Black Armada still existed, but its mission had evolved. Ships that once prepared for war now served as rescue vessels, exploration craft, and mobile universities traveling between worlds. The technology of dimensional warfare had been repurposed for peaceful ends. Null space medical facilities where time could be slowed to save critical patients, agricultural dimensions where crops grew in accelerated time to feed hungry worlds, and research stations where scientists could safely experiment with dangerous technologies in isolated pocket universes. Dr. Yamamura, now in his 70s but kept vital by medical technologies shared by Alliance species, stood before the Galactic Science Council presenting humanity's latest gift to the galaxy. We call it the Memory Vault, he explained, gesturing to a crystalline structure that seemed to exist in every dimension at once. Every moment, every thought, every dream of every being who consents can be preserved here. Not just for historical record, but as a living archive that future generations can experience. The hegemony destroyed countless cultures. With this, no culture will ever be truly lost again. The project had been a collaboration of human quantum computing, synthetic data processing, hegemony crystal technology, and the collective consciousness techniques of the kitanoid hives. It represented what the Alliance had become, greater than the sum of its parts. Children across the galaxy grew up with a fundamentally different understanding of the universe than their parents. Where once young hegemony were taught that they were destined to rule, they now learned about cooperation and mutual respect. Where conquered species once taught their offspring to hide their culture, they now celebrated it openly in festivals that spanned dimensions. Captain Marcus Rivera, now Admiral Rivera, commanded the Alliance's deep exploration fleet. Their mission, to find civilizations beyond the local galactic cluster and offer them the choice to join the Alliance. His fleet had made contact with 17 new species, each one approached with respect and genuine curiosity, rather than demands for submission. Remember, he told his crews, which included members of 30 different species, we're not conquerors or even recruiters. We're neighbors introducing ourselves. Some will join us, some won't, and that's their right. On a small colony world at the edge of Alliance space, a young human girl named Sarah sat in class with her best friend, a young kitanoid named Zekiki. Their teacher, a depth whose aquatic suit allowed her to move on land, was explaining the history of the galaxy. Can you imagine, the teacher asked, her translator rendering her water speech into words her students could understand, a time when our species were enemies? When we fought over resources that null space has made infinite? Sarah and Zekiki looked at each other and giggled. The idea seemed as absurd to them as fighting over air to breathe. This was humanity's true victory. Not the defeat of the hegemony fleet, not the technological superiority of the Black Armada, but this, children who couldn't imagine war between species, who grew up expecting cooperation as naturally as their parents had expected conflict. President Rodriguez, in her final address before stepping down, stood before the Alliance Parliament. She was older now, her hair white but her eyes still sharp with the determination that had led humanity through its greatest trial. When the hegemony arrived at Earth, they told us to kneel, she began. They expected submission because that's all they had ever known. Today, 5 years later, no one in this galaxy kneels to anyone. We stand together as equals facing a universe of infinite possibility. She paused, looking at the assembled representatives. Crystalline hegemony, chittering chitanoids, the flowing forms of depths, the geometric patterns of synthetics, and hundreds of others. Humanity's greatest contribution wasn't our technology or our fleets. It was a simple idea. That strength comes not from standing above others, but from lifting them up to stand beside you. The Black Armada was never about war. It was about having the power to say no to oppression and yes to freedom. As she spoke, outside the Parliament, ships from across the Alliance performed a synchronized dimensional jump, appearing and disappearing in a pattern that spelled out words in 1,000 languages. But they all meant the same thing. Together, we rise. The age of conquest was over. The age of exploration and cooperation had begun. And in schools across the galaxy, children learned the lesson of Earth. Sometimes the smallest voice, if it speaks with conviction and backs its words with action, can change the universe. Humanity had answered the galaxy's demand for surrender not with submission, but with transformation. The Black Armada had won more than a war. It had won a future where war itself might one day become obsolete. In her garden on Earth, Admiral Chen, retired now, watched the sunset. Above, the sky was filled with ships from 100 worlds coming and going freely, their pilots knowing they were welcome. Her granddaughter played with children from 3 different species, their laughter universal despite their different biologies. Was it worth it, Grandma? The child asked during a quiet moment. All the preparation, all the secret building? Chen pulled the child close, looking up at stars that now held promise instead of threat. Every moment of it. We didn't just save Earth, sweetheart. We saved the dream of what the galaxy could become. As night fell over Earth, null space portals opened across the planet, revealing the hidden cities where humanity had first learned to live between dimensions. They weren't hidden anymore. They were beacons inviting the galaxy to join humanity in transcending the limitations of normal space. The Black Armada still patrolled, but now it protected trade routes and refugee convoys. Its weapons, designed to phase through dimensions, had been modified to create rather than destroy, opening new realities for colonization, creating pocket universes for endangered species, building bridges between dimensions that had never been connected, and in the quiet moments between stars, when duty allowed reflection, every human who had been part of that first desperate defense remembered the moment when they chose not to kneel. They remembered the fear, the determination, and ultimately the triumph not of conquest but of principle. Humanity had shown the galaxy that there was another way, and the galaxy, freed from millennia of oppression, had embraced it. The story of the Black Armada would be told for generations, growing into legend. But for those who lived it, who stood on those black ships when the hegemony demanded surrender, it would always be personal. They had protected their home, freed the oppressed, and changed the course of galactic history. They had answered the call to kneel by standing taller than ever before. And in the infinite expanse of space and dimensions, their message echoed eternal. Earth does not kneel. Earth lifts others up. The end. Comment for next part.